Welcome. Today is March 29th. It's Palm Sunday. We had our Palm Sunday lesson a few weeks ago. Today, the Easter subject is the shape and prophecy of the cross. So, welcome. And the angel answered and said unto the woman, Fear not ye, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come see the place where he lay. So on the third day, the tomb was empty. Jesus had disappeared. This reminds me of the Mexican magician who said that I will make myself disappear on the count of three. Uno, dos. He disappeared without a trace. Of course, trace is the number in Spanish for three. Now, the tomb was empty. In 1870, President Ulysses S. Grant signed the Holidays Act, making Lincoln's Thanksgiving official. So a trivia question often asked by Groucho Marx is, on his show You Bet Your Life, who is buried in Grant's tomb? Who might be buried there? Well, the answer is no one, because tombs are underground and sarcophagi are above ground, and his tomb is above ground. It's a little bit of a trick question. Now, who is buried in Jesus' tomb? Well, no one. He's resurrected or woken up from the dead. Now, today we're going to look a little bit about the cross and prophecies of the cross. Of course, the Last Supper went back to the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop, and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out the door of the house until the morning. Now in the Septuagint Greek it comes through that the blood is supposed to be outside the door, and you do it out there rather than inside. But the word for dip there is bapsendes. In Greek, you're actually baptizing it. Now, the Latin word is tinguita, and that's where we get words like tincture and tinge, and the intinction as a means of dipping the bread in the wine. Now, on the upper left there is what's called a Kniza diagram. It's like three Pac-Men, and if you're normal, you'll see a triangle. I used to teach, and there's always some students that I don't see it. Well, most people see a triangle there. Your brain makes it. If you follow the instructions for splashing the blood, you can almost see there a cross. Now, that's the modern type cross. We're going to look at the actual shape of the cross. So it's just interesting the way that works out. Another event that happened, this is Amalek, and Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, Write this for a memorial in the book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Now in one of the battles there, Moses was on a hill with his hands held up on each side. Now who's fighting the actual battle on the ground? When he raised his hands, they were doing well. When he got tired and his hands came down, they didn't. So he had two helpers there helping to hold up his hands. He was in a lot of agony and pain. And if you looked up from the battle site, you might have seen something that looks like a preview of the crucifixion on the cross. Now the Epistle of Barnabas makes this connection and talks about that, so that's another interesting aspect. When we get to Numbers, the book of Numbers is named for the census at the beginning, chapter 2. If you've ever read that, it's a little bit boring with all those numbers. And they numbered the whole lot. And notice there are actually 13 tribes. There are 3 in each of the sides and the Levites in the middle, because Joseph had a double blessing. He gets 2 tribes. So sometimes when the 12 tribes are listed, there's one that's not listed. If you take the census numbers, do a spreadsheet, and add them together, and proportion them, saying each person takes about the same space with the Levites in the middle. From the perspective of the rising sun, looking down, you get the camp of Israel in the shape of a cross. This is what in computer science would be called an algorithm. It's a way to arrange everyone. This does not mean they actually did that. It just means the instructions, if followed precisely, would provide that shape. Later in Numbers, the Lord said unto Moses, Make thee a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. We have a serpent on a pole. If you put a serpent on a pole, you need something to hold it, so a lot of depictions have something that looks like a cross. There was a healing serpent, say from Egypt, and then through Greece and other places, the Asclepius, the healing serpent. This is a symbol of the nursing profession. At some point, someone decided to create a symbol for the doctors, the caduceus, which has two serpents. This is a symbol of Mercury and the god of Hermes, the god of commerce. So your doctors use the symbol of the commerce, and the nurses use the one of healing. Now in John 3:14, Jesus says, And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so much the Son of Man be lifted up. So there we have another little prophecy. Now, there are hymns that have names that are called mondegrims. From Sylvia Wright, 1954, she heard a poem laid him on the green as Lady Mondegreen. And so the mondegreen word is used to describe hymns or lyrics that sound something else than what they are actually meant to be. So since we're talking about the cross, you have the song Gladly the Cross I Bear. And that can turn into Gladly the Cross I Bear. It's a bear that is cross-eyed. Others like Come On, O King Eternal, Andy Walks With Me, Andy Talks With Me, Bringing in the Sheets, A Maze of Grapes, How Sweet and Round, How Late Thou Art, for the springtime change, and While Shepherd washed their socks by night. Used to be frocks by night, but people know more what socks are than frocks. Now there are many Christian cross variants. A Greek, Maltese, St. Andrew's, Latin, Patriarchal, Papal, and some of these appear on coins throughout history. You can check Wikipedia to find a lot of those. Now, if you work with programming or character sets, the Unicode character set allows you to do 65,000 and more characters. We need more than just A through Z. I listed some here. These are characters in the Unicode set that correspond to crosses, all different types. He that taketh not his cross and followeth me is not worthy of me. Now that German word, and there's the Luther version, is then Kreuz, related to the Latin word crux, and we related to our word cross. You might have heard of the Iron Cross, the German Iron Cross, as a medal. It started during the Napoleonic Wars, and it dates from about 1813 and shown, and it continues today, and it was is the emblem of the Bundeswehr, the modern World War II German armed forces. It's just that these crosses have appeared here and there throughout history. Some church plans are shaped in the shape of the traditional cross. Church of St. Sava and others, St. Paul's Cathedral. We have a cross in the Chi Rho. The Chi Rho are the first two words of the Greek word for Christ, or the christened one, Christos. Now, Constantine adopted that, the Chi-Rho symbol. But the other question is that R for Rome, or part of Christ? Has the power of Rome taken over the actual cross or power of Christ? We'll let you discuss that. You'll see these in sanctuaries. You see the Chi and the Rho. Does that R represent the power and might of Rome? Jesus appears to use a little play on words there. If you call Jesus a fool by not doing what he wants, you've called him a mora, or the English word moron. But if we do a Spoonerism and exchange the letters, we get Roma, or Romi, the power of Rome. If you say, oh, we want the power of Rome, have you called Jesus a fool? We'll let you discuss that. There are different chrismons. Here's one, the chrismon of St. Ambrose, in a cathedral with the Alpha, Omega, and the Chi-Rho in it. This is part of St. Ambrose, a symbol. Now, if we go back to Esther, we have Mordecai being put to death. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And the matter was revealed to Mardochæus, and he made it known to Esther, and she declared the king the matter of the conspiracy. And when it was found out, and they were both hanged on a tree, as was written in the book of Chronicles before the king. Crucifixion goes back to the Persians, and Esther records some of this, and so there we have it on a tree. And this will show up. In Deuteronomy, and if a man has committed a sin worthy of death, and to be put to death, and thou hang him on a tree. Today we hang Christmas ornaments on a Christmas tree. We might say some people, the ornaments are addicted to that because they're hung on trees. Yeah. Benjamin Franklin said we must all hang together or we will all hang separately. In this case, hanging on a tree. Paul quotes this, Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, Cursed is every one that hangeth on a tree. Now that word for tree is skilu, xilu. Now English people have trouble pronouncing the KS sound at the beginning of a syllable. If it's at the end, like Jackson, it's okay, or we turn that to box. But the KS at the beginning was changed to Z and written as an X. So a xylophone is literally a wooden voice, musical instrument, but to pronounce it in Greek, you have to go to KS, xylon. But it's not a tree. It's a piece of a tree, a wood or timber piece. So it's translated as a tree, but it's not a real tree. It's the tree that you've taken off as a board or timber. Deuteronomy, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt in any wise bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of God. And thy land be not defiled, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. So that was one of the rules in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, literally meaning second law. So why was Jesus taken off the cross the same day? Let's go to John. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was a high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken, that they might be taken away. Once you break someone's legs on the cross, they're not going to live very long. And why do you take them off? Because we had that rule in Deuteronomy, and the day of preparation. Today, that's in Greek, the Paraskevi, literally means the day of preparation is their name for Friday, which is the traditional day when the crucifixion happened. Now, How does one get 3 days and 3 nights in the grave from late Friday until early Sunday? Well, there are all sorts of reasons people have come up with. If you move the crucifixion to Wednesday or Thursday, the numbers work out and you don't have contradictions, but it's not the tradition. The crucifixion is described in the different Gospels. There are little differences. Have up there 7 days without God makes 1 week. We have those 3 days, 3 nights. We've talked about that briefly in the past. It can also be day, 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 night, night, night is what literally it is, and that gives us some alternative meanings. We're not interested in that today. So there we have a seven-sided heptagon. There are octagons, heptagons, hexagons, pentagons. One person got very upset when I claimed there were 2-sided polygons. So we had to reconcile that. So I said, well, let's just let bygones be bygones. And that ended that. Some of you may have seen the movie Spartacus featuring Kirk Douglas from 1967, based on the 1951 novel. Now, there were a number of slave revolts. This is called the Third Servile War, the servile relating to slave in Latin. Also called the Gladiator War or War of Spartacus by Plutarch. This happened about 70 BC, the time of Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, the triumvirate, which was the end of the Roman Republic. Now, at the end of the servile war conflict, if you remember the movie, the Sicilian pirates had double-crossed them. They couldn't get across to Sicily. Well, part of that's made up for the movie, but part of that is true. They captured about 6,000 slave survivors. They were crucified all along the Appian Way to Rome. No order was ever given to take the bodies down, so they were there for many years. Jesus was crucified about 100 years later. What this means is the Romans were very adept at crucifixion. It wasn't something that just happened as a one-time event. Now, what was the actual shape of that cross? That's part of we did a few prophecies. And so we have a number of interesting connections, and what I have here is the summary. I'll just go through because we'll cover each one of those in detail. Somewhere between 40 and 100 years after the crucifixion, while it was still used by the Romans, the Epistle of Barnabas compares the shape of the cross to the Greek letter T, which is not the traditional shape. Also had a gematria value of 300. The Hebrew corresponding letter was Tav, which looks to us more like an X. And because the cross, which is shaped like the T, was destined to convey grace, it means also the 300, which is the 300 value. So we have some other authors that do that. Now, Barnabas goes on and takes that number, the 3 letters, the 300, the iota, which has a value of 10, the eta has a value of 8, as the first 2 letters of the name of Jesus, and makes some connections there. What we're interested here is just that he compared the shape of the cross to the T, or Tav, or Tau. Now, Jesus is the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. Revelation 22:13, I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and end, the first and the last. Alpha being the first letter, where we get alphabet, and Omega being the last letter, the beginning and the end. In some churches, you'll see the Alpha and Omega. You may also see the IHS. Some people, it's actually Greek letters, the first letters of Jesus' name, and that is Jesus, or Jesus. Some people say, oh, it's in his service, because it fits the English letters. Those first 2 letters, the I and H, are the ones that Barnabas just mentioned as the first 2 letters. These then would be the first 3 letters. Now, Justin Martyr, about 100 years later or so, he explicitly says the cross of Jesus was a 2-beam shape. The lamb which was committed to be wholly roasted was a symbol of the suffering of the cross which Christ would undergo. He compares it to, again, the tau. Now, in English we call it tau. In modern Greek it's taf. So whichever one you want to call it, yeah. There's the St. Anthony's cross, sometimes called the crux commissa. The Latin writer Tertullian, this is about 200 years later, says the Greek letter tav and the Latin letter T are the same shape as the crucifixion cross. And there's the Latin for that, where he says that. So we have a number of authors saying, oh, the shape of the cross was the shape of what we would call a T. Now, Lucian was an author 125, about 150 AD. He has a large number of works which he wrote, mostly in Greek, and it combines the old Attic Greek, which he makes a little fun of, and the Koine Greek, which are more similar than some people want to admit. One of his works, The Trial of the Court of Vows. Remember, he's making a little fun of this. And he has the Greek letter sigma right before tav, or tau. He accuses the letter tav of having provided tyrants with the model for the wooden instrument with which to crucify people, and demands the tau be executed on his own shape. And he goes on and on about it, about what sigma should do to tav, and so forth. But the whole idea here is that T shape is the one recognized then as the shape of the cross. Remember, they did crucify a lot of people, like in time of Spartacus and after. So people would be familiar with that shape. So we get to the crucifixion, and Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross, and the writing was, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. That title, in Greek, it's titlon, but it comes through Latin, and that's where we get the word title. This title then read many of the Jews, for the place where Jesus was crucified was nigh to the city, or near. And it was written in Hebrew and Greek and Latin. Well, they didn't exactly call it Latin, and Hebrew was a dead language. It had been spoken since the Babylonian exile when they switched to Aramaic. Now, the English changes the order of the Greek, and what the Greek actually says, it was written in the language of the Hebrews, the language of the Romans, Romasti, and the language of the Greeks, the Hellenisti. So it was just written in the language of the three peoples, which means it could have been written in Hebrew, but no one really read Hebrew except some of the religious elite. So it might have been written in Aramaic, but Aramaic was the language of the Hebrews. So the crucifixion cross appears to have been a wooden main beam with a crosspiece that formed the shape of a T. Show some depictions there. Now, there I have the crossbeam, or that's the main beam. We add a crossbeam to it, and there we get the traditional cross, 2 pieces of wood. Not a tree, pieces of wood. Now it says, we just read there was a title. Would you put the title at the bottom? Is one place. Another place to put the title is at the top. You have something where you attach it and you just stick that on. Now you've got the person on there, and from a distance, something with a title, if you don't get too close, kind of looks like that other cross, so you can get the impression of having both just the beam part, or you can add some title at the top. And I just made that up to give some reason why you might have switched to the other cross, because from a distance it might look like that. So some scholars hold the idea of a cross being a stake without the crossbeam, kind of like the old Persian model. The Greek word is stavros, cross. It's actually related to the English word stake through Proto-Indo-European from stawer, stake or pole. The actual word then was the skilon, the wood piece. Latin was crux, or crucifixion cross, any wooden frame. Yeah. Now, a cross was a stake. In modern times, being a vegetarian is a big mistake. Just a little joke there. Now, we continue. Let's go to Acts. Stephen is speaking. Saul, later Paul, was a witness. The God of our fathers raised up Jesus, whom ye slew and hanged on a tree. Piece of wood. That's Stephen. Of course, they stoned him. Paul was holding the coats. Paul later uses this idea. And we are witnesses of all things, which he did in the land of the Jews and in Jerusalem. Well, he was also a witness to Stephen being stoned, whom, that is Jesus, they slew and hanged on a tree. Jesus being on the piece of wood. Now let's go back to Joseph in Egypt. He's in a prison. He's interpreting the dreams of the butler, the wine steward, and the baker. Here's the verse. And in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of batements for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. That's the baker telling Joseph his dream. And Joseph interprets it. The birds in the interpreted dream refer to eating his flesh from the basket. And yet 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree. And the birds shall eat the flesh from off thee. Now the butler was going to be restored and pouring the wine for the Pharaoh. So the little remez or hint here is that in 3 days the bread will be broken and the wine will be poured. That from the Last Supper. So just a little interesting connection you can make. Now let's look at the Pony Express. No, not the American one, the one from the Persian Empire. The ancient Greek word agarevo means dispatch as a courier or to press into service. It's of Persian origin, and it gets us the Greek word for messenger or angel, because angerevo goes to angelos, and so it's both a message and a messenger. And this word angelo or angel was used for the Hebrew word malach for angel or messenger. It's also the root of the word for Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament. Now, Herodotus reports on the Persian system of mounted couriers that was similar to the Pony Express in the 19th century. This Persian system could take messages from Susa, where Esther was, remember Mordecai and Esther, to Sardis, the Fifth Revelation Church, about 1,700 miles in 9 days. That's 200 miles a day. And they use horses. I guess a pony with a sore throat would be a little horse, but, they would use the horses. And the Persian Empire was quite big. If you look at that, the Persian Empire went from what? Egypt up to near Greece. They never quite got Greece. Through Turkey, Iraq, Iran, a whole way over to Afghanistan. Some people over there would like the Persian Empire restored, but that requires a lot of countries today to be put together. Now, Herodotus writes, it is said that as many days as there are in the whole journey, so many are the men and horses that stand along the road, each horse and man at the interval of a day's journey, and these are stayed together neither by snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness, from accomplishing their appointed course with all speed. Do you recognize that? The post office actually took their motto from that, and that's where they get it. Now, to mail via the post office, you need their stamp of approval. And it's been said that use FedEx if you want the package to positively, absolutely get there tomorrow. Use the post office if you want the package absolutely, positively get there eventually. Because theirs is an average day and not a guarantee. Now, we did that word because it's used here and in the crucifixion. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name, whom they compelled to bear his cross. Now, it says compelled, and that's what they did, but Matthew is picking this word. Might this word have been picked because the cross represents a message? And they're carrying a message pressed into service as a courier to carry a message of the cross. Now, what if an evil entity compelled you to be pressed into service as a courier to deliver false messages or indistinct messages, or go a mile with that message? What would you do? Well, we see that in the mile verse. And whosoever shall compel thee a mile, go with him 2, not 2 miles. And it's mile 1 because you need mile 1 to get the play on words. Whosoever, hostis, hostile, bones, you compels to be a message with it. Mile 1, million. That is an indistinct message covered in a few verses earlier. Or a millstone. Go away with it to Dio, which is of God. So using that word compels you to be a messenger. Why would you go with the other person? Why don't they take their own message? They're sending you with a message. Now the example is Paul was compelled as a messenger of the religious institution to go 1 mile with an indistinct message. Instead, he changed course. He turned to jawbone or cheek, which is that verse, the one before, and went 2 miles and more with a message of God. Now, over the years, they made up all these stories about a soldier, and you could make them go 2 miles or 1 with their whatever they're carrying. And if you think about it from a military point of view, you never send soldiers alone. People would want to attack them to get their weapons. They were in garrison. These were not top-rate soldiers. The top-rate soldiers were in Britain, on the Danube, on the Rhine, on the Euphrates. And so the story appears to have been made up to support this. I couldn't find any evidence that this was actually ever done. But it's a nice story if you like to repeat it. But if you dig into the words, this is what that appears to mean. You're compelled to be a messenger, agarevsi. Yeah. Oh, that's to smite you on the cheek. Yeah, if you're turning the other cheek, if you're sent on a mission and it's not the right mission, you turn and go the other way. Matthew 10:38. And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. We get that word for follow, akoluthos, as following, attending. We get acolyte from that. Now, it comes from the word kelevthos, road or way, and kelevo, which means urge or command. So we're told to be followers of Jesus and not leaders in the human sense, and sometimes we get that turned around. Another place, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And Jacob began Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called the Christ, or Christos, the anointed one. Paul uses these words as play on words, and so does Jesus. Today, these words are pronounced the same. The vowels were closer then, but you would have got it. Christos and Christos. My yoke is Christ, and my burden or tax is light. The yoke is zygos, which is 2 going together. If you're a little child and Jesus is in you, you've got 2 there, and we get that analogy there. So, my yoke is easy. It's actually, the word means useful, not easy. Christos still means useful today in modern Greek, and Christos, the anointed one. Now, if you don't take up your cross, you are without the cross in Christ. Interestingly, we get a play on words there, appears to be used in several places by Jesus. Christos, if you take the T, the tav, out of Christ, the cross out of Christ, you get Christos, gold. Some people, silver and gold have I none, does not exist, Peter says. But some want the gold, they take the cross out to get the gold. Christos, Christos. Now, what if you don't take your cross, you are without the cross or T. Stavros is cross. Stavros is lizard or serpent. If you take that cross out of the cross, it's a lizard or serpent. That savros is the last part of dinosaur. Dino, terrible, and the sour part of dinosaur comes from the Greek savros, a lizard or serpent. So we get that interesting play on words. Now, an English one that, of course, wasn't used in ancient times is that some churches take the blood or the cross out of Easter and the church in general. That's John 6. Once Jesus explained what he was about with the blood and the body and doing these things, he started to lose followers. A few years ago, I said, well, what would happen if you decided instead of taking the, he said you had to do this. If we ignore what Jesus said, maybe we'll get more followers and you can fill the pews. And it appears that's been done in some places. Now, if you take that crossbeam in Easter out of the T for the cross, you make it easier, for better or worse. So that's just a little play on words in English. And some churches take the cross, the blood, and everything out of music to appeal to more people, fill the pews. Made me think, beam me up, Scotty, there's no intelligent life down here, which is a whole nother story. Okay. So we looked at a little bit about the shape of the cross, some prophecies of the cross. The cross appears to have been a crossbeam, but somehow it changed into the one where we get the top part. We looked at the Last Supper last time, and the whole idea of the Last Supper was the betrayal of Judas. The word for betrayal can also mean tradition, very close, based on the same words. And if Peter represents the church, there's an underlying secondary meaning that maybe the church of the future will tradition mean. So that was an interesting part. Next week, we're going to look at before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. And when Peter represents the church, we have the literal meaning where Peter denies Christ and has all those feelings and regret about that. That's the literal one, but there's an underlying current which Jesus also mentions other things about. I wonder if Peter or the church in the future will deny Christ in certain ways, and he gives us little hints of this. So that'll be next week. We covered the cross, shape of the cross, and prophecies today. Okay, thank you. This has been Easter, the shape and prophecy